Hey there, everybody. All right, so we just left the caboose right behind me there. I gotta walk backwards because the sun is over there and it's just starting to come out again. Behind the caboose, or in front of the caboose over here, we first hit the freight station, which today, as part of the museum, really just serves as a model train display or diorama, if you will. And there's a film in there as well for people to watch, which is really cool. Now we're gonna head into the main museum. But before we do, one thing I want to note, two things I want to note. First of all, is this very, very old car we see in front of us here. And why I want to point this out is, if you look at it carefully, look at these more or less spoked wheels. And then you notice up front here, you see what might be a hitch or a lever, and what looks like to be a seat. Now, this could have been pulled by a locomotive. I think similar looking cars, some early ones, were pulled by locomotives. But I think this car right here was one of the very first cars and was horse-drawn. It's hard for some people to imagine. Wait till this truck goes by. Hard for some people to imagine, but we didn't start out with these speeding bullet locomotives, you know, and steam engines. The very first trains on the B&O Railroad were drawn by horse. And they could go, oh shoot, I think from Baltimore to here, which is all of 13 miles, in about 90 minutes or so. About 4 miles every half hour. Which really, if you think about it, isn't too bad for back in the day. And another thing to note about that is they actually changed, it was somewhat of humane treatment. They changed the horse about every 7 or 8 miles so they wouldn't get exhausted, and then they would have places where they switched off. One other thing to point out here is, this is super cool. This huge bay door here actually goes to more or less a service bay. And in addition to being the oldest surviving train depot in the country here, right here in Ellicott City, it is also the only other surviving depot of its kind that has this huge bay door so that cars could be serviced. As you see, the track runs right into the building. And I think that is super cool. So we'll cross our fingers. This place is usually pretty quiet. Hopefully there's nobody in these couple rooms, so I don't have to be embarrassed narrating, but if so, then that's okay. And I've got all of 8 minutes left. And it's heating up outside. Feels cooler in here. This is just a great little museum. One thing I want to point out right away is this guy, John W. Garrett. His middle name was Work, John Work Garrett. President of the B&O from 1858 to 1884, which of course puts him square in the middle of the action during the Civil War. And I've already mentioned that a bit, and I'm going to mention it some more, but maybe not on this little tour because we have to kind of move through it here. So this whole room here is pretty much dedicated to the telegraph, which I love that they did as such, because it just can't be underestimated, or enough can't be said about the importance of the telegraph, especially coming online more or less at the time, same time as mass transportation. This, of course, is another very fascinating point of study for me, and the confluence it can't be emphasized enough. So here is an early telegraph. Here's an early telegraph that people love to play with in here incessantly. It's pretty loud. They just go, and they just keep, you know. This right here is really cool though, because this relieved people of what was known by telegraph operators as the dreaded glass arm syndrome. This allowed them to tap it from side to side like that. The red button is facing to the side there, instead of like this, where they were pressing down like that. And apparently the glass arm syndrome was a real thing, and I think some strong comparisons could be drawn to what we know as carpal tunnel syndrome today. America's first internet. So again, for those who aren't aware, the telegraph was commissioned in 1843, if I have that right, and the first telegram got off in 1844, as we can see right here. And the very first message that Morse delivered said, "What God hath wrought." Quite an interesting first message to get off, don't you think? I do. It was, the word Advent doesn't do it enough justice, especially when compared to the railway. Again, the second industrial revolution had a lot to do with expansion, which had a lot to do, all these things had a lot to do with the nature of the Civil War and the hows and the whys. There were other aspects to the Civil War, of course, as I've mentioned. I don't mean to downplay them, but these other parts are often downplayed even more and deserve much more of a prominent part in the story. There was a lot going on. There was a lot at stake. America was in a race with other nations. We were expanding. We were, you could say, acquiring land at an astronomical rate. And the telegraph, the railroad, everything came into play here. And it all came into a confluence with the changing of the guard as far as labor goes. Do you get it now? I'm gonna keep hammering away at this. I might not be doing the best job, but I'm gonna keep hammering away at this. This is some really, really cool china. Now, this was made for us for the 100-year anniversary, and it was known as Centenary Blue. And it was very, very exquisite, and it was a lot more painstaking to produce, because instead of photo engraving, they had to they engraved these by hand, and they were not mass produced or using repetitive patterns, as you can see. Even around the edges of the plates, they have different pictures. Now, at the top of this one that says Cumberland Narrows, the top train says the Tom Thumb. That was the I think the first steam engine. Then the Atlantic was 1832. Then the Philip Thomas, 1838. So there are no replicated patterns on these plates. They took a lot of great care and meticulous design and artwork to produce. I find this really fascinating. This one here says Potomac Valley. That one says Cumberland Narrows. This one says Carrollton Viaduct. Again, viaducts were a big thing. Thomas Viaduct and Harper's Ferry, West Virginia. Again, talking about intersections, confluences. That's what I deal with. That's my specialty. So this last room is got a few different displays. I think these over here are pretty cool. These are from, I think, let's see. No, these are from the Railway Express. Again, in confluence with the advent of mass communication / transportation. Delivering a package within a few days, if some of you can believe it, used to be a big deal. A big deal. The youngsters think it's really neat that they can Instagram their friends and stuff like that. Compared to how much of a radical sea change this was, the internet and Instagram and YouTube, I think it pales in comparison to the leap that was taken in the early to middle 19th century. Everything used to take forever. Communicating with somebody across town, across your state, let alone across the nation, took forever. To send something to somebody Took forever, if it ever got there at all. Hard for some people to imagine. But it really wasn't that long ago. This is pretty neat. So this is paraphernalia from the centenary, and kind of reminds me of display that they have at the Adams County Historical Museum on some of the paraphernalia that they have on display from the anniversaries after the Civil War in Gettysburg. Pretty neat. Shot of the car house. So they call it a car house. What did I call it? I forget. Repair and storage of rolling stock and engines. Invention of steam locomotives, a large steam porter funnel was installed in the ceiling to allow smoke and steam to escape. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. This just talks about what I went over earlier about how this all started with cars pulled by horses, and then eventually led to some very humble steam engines. I like that one right there. And then to the more advanced ones that kind of resemble the ones we have today. And I don't have any more time left, but I'm gonna get back to this guy. Believe you me. Hope you all don't mind recurrent themes, but the ones that I keep hitting on I think are very important for people to understand and think about. Some cool flags and lanterns here.